All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Cooking with Plants session. Tonight, we're going to be talking about plant proteins, beans, and lentils. It's 6:30, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with a couple housekeeping things. You can probably tell already that your mics are muted and your cameras are turned off. If you want to, go to this slide. If you want to submit a question, please use the Q&A function, which is at the top of your screen. You should be seeing a screen displayed in front of you here that has a red circle around that Q&A button. That's a great place to put in any questions that you might have that are relevant to the ingredients that we're going to be talking about, the content that we're covering, and we'll try to get to them at the end of class because I can't see them while I'm talking to you. So we'll make sure to get to them by the end of class. If we don't get to your question, you're also welcome to email us at lifestylemedicine@trinity-health.org. And then if you have a really specific question that's just really related to you and not so much to the content in the class, please also use that email. If you would like closed captioning, please go to the three dots that are on the top right-hand side of that toolbar on your screen that say more underneath them. Go down to where it says language, select that, and then you'll see an option pop up that says turn on live captions, and then you should see words start populating on your screen, hopefully true to what I'm speaking out loud to you. Right. And for those of you who I have not met yet, who have not been in one of our classes, I'm Kelly Wilson. I'm one of the registered dietitians in our lifestyle medicine department here at Trinity Health Ann Arbor. Lifestyle medicine, if you're not familiar with that field, it's a medical subspecialty that focuses on disease treatment, reversal, and prevention through 6 key pillars. Nutrition is one of them, and so that's what we focus on in this whole food, plant-forward cooking class. Daily movement, stress reduction, social connection, so positive relationships with other humans, getting restorative sleep, and avoiding risky substances are the other pillars. So our team here, we do classes like this, and we talk to patients one-on-one about each of those 6 pillars and how they can apply evidence-based principles in their journey to prevent, treat, and reverse chronic disease. I have a background in farming and obviously nutrition, being a dietitian. I have some training in culinary genomics and culinary medicine, which is why I get to teach these awesome classes. And I truly am excited about these classes because I really think everybody can cook. I think sometimes we get intimidated by the kitchen and think we need to have lots of training or lots of fancy equipment and cookbooks in order to cook tasty, nourishing food. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. I think you can learn some simple basic skills and make a wide variety of really tasty dishes that nourish you, that are pleasing to the eye and make you feel good. So hopefully you feel that way by the end of this class and any of the other classes that you take in our series. I also want to note that recipes are always suggestions. So we have a variety of different recipes in these classes. If there's an ingredient that either is too expensive or you can't find in your grocery store, or you have an allergy to, or maybe you don't have a taste for that food yet, there's often a substitution that you can find to swap in. And if you ever come across something that you can't find a good answer online, feel free to email us and we're happy to help you with swaps and substitutions. And then if you're new on this journey to incorporating more plant-based foods and your diet, I really want to encourage you to start slow. Long-term change takes time, and we know that sustainable change starts with small incremental steps. So start with what you know, start with the recipes that you love and enjoy, and adapt them to add some more of these plant-based foods into your life. And be kind to yourself in this journey and remember that persistent progress is really what we're going for over perfection. We're human beings. Perfection's not attainable. So be kind to yourself and just try to keep yourself pointed forward in that forward direction. All right, this is an overview of the class series. So this is our third class this year. Again, we're talking about beans and lentils, but you can see kind of some of the other classes in this series. You can join one or all of these classes. You don't have to do them in order. They do kind of build on each other, but you're still going to get great information if you can only attend or watch one class. If you have registered for the class, which if you're watching this, I'm guessing that you have registered, you don't need to register for subsequent classes. You're on the list. You'll get the emails about the upcoming classes. And if you don't want to get the emails, you can just ignore them or let me know. So tonight's class, we're going to be talking about the benefits of beans and lentils, and then we're going to go into 3 different recipes. Well, really 4 recipes. We're going to do a curried cauliflower stew, a black bean taco with a cabbage slaw, and this is a recipe that we make in our Nutrition Buddies class, and the kids love them. So if you have kids in your family, this is a kid-approved recipe. And then we're going to do a really fast and easy garbanzo bean salad, which works wonderful for a fast lunch option or a quick dinner option. Before we dive into the content, I just want to remind everybody that this is a general nutrition class. If you have a specific health condition, the information we provide may or may not apply to you. So I would highly encourage you to reach out to your physician and your registered dietitian team before making any changes to your diet. If you need to be connected with a dietitian or a physician, you're more than welcome to email us at lifestylemedicine@trinityhealth.org, and we'd be happy to get you connected to someone. All right, so I said we're talking about beans and lentils, and I wanted to bring up this idea of legumes because I feel like that's a word that gets thrown around a lot. You might see that in nutrition articles, and it can be kind of confusing sometimes. So what is a legume anyways? Well, beans and lentils, you may have guessed based on the title of today's presentation, are legumes. Legumes are also going to be beans and, peas and soybeans and peanuts as well. So anything in that kind of family, and these are plants that fix nitrogen. So what that means is that they pull nitrogen from our atmosphere down into the soil, and they've got this beautiful relationship with some bacteria in the soil where then those bacteria take that nitrogen and they kind of fix it in place in the soil. And what's so wonderful about that is that then other plants can use that nitrogen as a source of fertilizer and fuel to grow. So these legume family plants fix that nitrogen to provide that fertilizer to other plants. For us, from a nutrition perspective, we just really care about the fact that these are foods that are typically higher in protein. So these are good sources of plant-based protein. You'll see on the slide here, we've got some asterisks next to peanuts. So when we're talking about legumes from a protein perspective, our beans, peas, lentils, soybeans are mostly what we're going to be focusing on. And peanuts, while yes, they're a legume, are higher in fat. So from a nutrition perspective, we lump them into that healthy fat category more commonly. If you're thinking about serving sizes for our legume foods, like our beans and our lentils, about a 1/4 cup of dip, so like for a hummus example, or about 1/2 cup cooked is about 1 serving. So why do we want to talk about these foods? Why are they important on our plant-based plates? Beans and lentils are really powerhouse foods that are often lacking in that standard American, aka SAD diet. And not only do they contain protein, but they also contain complex carbohydrates and fiber and antioxidants and a whole host of vitamins and minerals, many of which that most Americans don't get on a consistent basis. They also contain polyphenols, which are phytonutrients or plant-based nutrients. with really potent antioxidant properties. And antioxidants, I don't know if we've talked about those in this class yet or not. So I'll just go through a quick explanation. Antioxidants are compounds that protect our cells from oxidative stress and the damage that oxidative stress causes. So you can think about oxidative stress with the example of a rust on a car. That's an example of oxidation and some oxidative stress. Or if you've ever cut an apple or a pear and then you've seen it brown, that would be another example of oxidation. So antioxidants in the foods that we eat help protect that reaction from happening in our body, and they're protecting our cells from damage, and that damage is what can ultimately lead to some chronic disease. So we want to stop that process from happening. Antioxidant foods like beans can help us do that. Beans also are really full of fiber. They're one of the densest sources of fiber in our plant-forward diet and in our diet in general. Fiber, especially soluble fiber, is really important for helping lower our cholesterol levels. It helps keep us full, so it increases satiety. It helps with blood sugar regulation and has been shown to support prevention of certain types of cancer. Now, when we're thinking about how much fiber we want to get every day, our goals are about 25 to 38 grams of fiber per day. And there is research that's showing upwards of 40 grams of fiber could be beneficial, especially when it comes to cancer prevention. And again, beans and lentils are going to be some of our densest sources of fiber in our diet. So they're a really great way to help us meet that fiber goal. Another huge benefit of beans and lentils you can see on this table here, they're really inexpensive compared to some other protein options we might have at the grocery store. So per pound, they're usually a couple dollars per pound cheaper than, say, our animal-based proteins like beef or chicken. So from a budgeting perspective, that's really great. And then from a planetary health perspective, they're a huge boon. So we know climate change is an issue right now. It's a real concern. And animal production is one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. So by switching some of our animal protein intake to plant-based protein sources, whole food plant-based protein sources like beans and lentils, we can reduce our own carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emissions. So win, win, win. They're good for you, they're good for the environment, and they're cheap. So one question that we often get when we're talking to people about plant-based protein options is, will I get enough protein eating just beans and lentils? And the short answer is yes. While protein needs vary from person to person, depending on your age, your health conditions, level of activity, you can meet your body's protein needs with plant-based foods. All plant foods have protein. Some, like legumes and beans, just have a higher concentration of protein. Right? You're even going to get protein from broccoli, believe it or not. And then another question we often get is, if I'm eating these plant-based proteins, do I need to combine different types of foods to make a complete protein? And the answer is no. So protein is made up of building blocks called amino acids. Humans need 20 different types of amino acids to build the proteins in our body. 9 of those amino acids are essential, which means we have to eat them in our diet. 11 of those amino acids we can make from those 9 essential amino acids. And plant protein foods actually do contain all 9 of those essential amino acids. They just might be lower in some of those than some other foods. So for example, some might be low in methionine, another plant protein might be a little bit low in, or plant food might be a little bit low in lysine. And as long as we're eating a wide variety of whole plant foods throughout our day and throughout our week, we're getting adequate quantities of all 9 of those essential amino acids, and we don't have to necessarily eat them together in that exact same meal. Okay, so you don't have to worry about combining things as long as you're eating like we encourage, the rainbow, and you're eating a diversity of whole grains, plant-based proteins, and fresh fruits and vegetables. You're going to get what you need. When it comes to cooking beans and lentils, and I'm talking like dry beans and lentils, we often get a lot of questions around soaking versus not soaking. And it looks like, Lori, I see that you have raised your hand. If you have a question, if you could just put that in the Q&A, that would be awesome, and we will get to it at the end of class. Thank you so much. Sorry, it's a little hard to manage the Q&A. I've got a lot of different things on my screen right now, so I appreciate your patience. All right, so if we're cooking dry beans, one of the things that we can do to help decrease our cooking time is soak them. Soaking also helps dissolve some of the starches that might cause some GI distress for some people. So if you're going to soak your beans, just you cover them in a few inches of water. You leave them for a couple hours or overnight, and then you want to discard that water, put fresh water in there, and then you would cook them on your stove top. Okay, you can also soak them before putting them in a pressure cooker, and then it takes like 2 to 5 minutes to cook your beans in the pressure cooker if that's the way you like to cook. Some people might experience some gas and bloating when they add beans to their diet, and often this is because you may not be consuming a lot of fiber yet. And like we said, beans have a lot of fiber in them. So we really encourage you to start slow. If beans are a new thing for you to eat consistently, start by adding a tablespoon or two to your salad or to your grain bowl, and then work your way up over the course of a couple weeks to eating that half cup or cup of beans daily. But give yourself that time to kind of adjust and be patient with your body, because it does take a little bit of time to adjust to that increased fiber intake, but I promise you, you will get there. And also make sure that you're drinking ample amounts of water as you're increasing your bean and your fiber intake, and that's going to help decrease some of that distress as well. There's also a compound in beans called raffinose. It's actually a type of sugar. Ose at the end of a word, kind of gives you that clue that is a sugar. And some humans lack the enzyme alpha-galactidase to break down that sugar. And so it gets to our colon intact, and our gut bacteria then ferment that sugar, which can cause, in some people, some gas and bloating. That fermentation process actually also has been potentially linked to some cancer risk reduction. So it's not totally a bad thing, but if you get gas and bloating, that's uncomfortable. And so we want to try to minimize that. Some ways that we can minimize that if that raffinose is the culprit is by using something called kombu, which is a type of seaweed or sea vegetable. This has a glutamic acid in it, which actually helps to break down that raffinose so that it increases the digestibility of those beans, and it has the added benefit of adding some additional nutrients like iodine to your pot of beans. So you would just throw the kombu into your pot of beans when you are cooking it, and that's going to help break that raffinose down. It also adds a really nice savory kind of umami flavor. So you've got that going for you as well. Sprouting is another way that you can decrease the raffinose in the beans. So then you would just soak your beans for a longer period of time until you start to see them crack and sprout. Or you could take something called Beano, which actually is alpha-galactidase enzyme, and will help break down that raffinose. You can cook beans on the stovetop. Like I said earlier, soaking will help you cut down on the cooking time, or you can choose to cook them in something like an Instapot, multi-cooker, pressure cooker. That's going to drastically reduce the time of cooking dry beans. And there is some research that shows when you're cooking in that Instapot or pressure cooker, you actually increase some of the antioxidant levels, particularly for beans like black beans. And then on the slide, you can see a couple quick cooking options. If you don't want to cook, say black beans or pinto beans from dry, but you have a bag of red lentils or brown lentils, those are really fast cooking lentils from dry. And then always feel welcome to use canned beans. We're going to use those in our recipes tonight. Just look for low sodium ones and rinse them to reduce some of that sodium content. All right, and then finally, I just wanted to give you all a few ideas about how to incorporate these foods into your meals. So, like we said, starting with where you are is always the best place. So, if you are someone who enjoys pasta, you can add canned lentils to your pasta sauce instead of some ground meat, or go 50-50. You could use a bean-based pasta as your base to get some of that bean benefit into that meal. Add them to soups and chilies. We're going to make a taco tonight that's bean-based. And then if you enjoy salads or making grain bowls, add a few tablespoons of beans or lentils to those dishes. And then they're also really good as a snack. So hummus is made from chickpeas. So you're getting some of those bean benefits by snacking on some hummus and veggies. Edamame, which is soybean, is a nice tasty snack. And you may have seen that if you've gone to a sushi restaurant or a Japanese restaurant. And then roasted chickpeas can be a nice, tasty, crunchy snack as well. And you can buy those already prepared in the grocery store. There's lots of recipes online for making those yourself. All right, so I'm gonna stop there with our presentation and get us in the kitchen so we can get through our recipes for this evening. We're gonna start with, I'm gonna make sure I'm spotlighted here for everyone so you can see the cutting board really well, because that's what we care about. All right, we're gonna start with a curried red lentil stew. So this is a recipe that comes together really quickly, and it's actually one of my favorites to make for people when they're feeling ill, or if I need to make a big batch of something to help a friend out who's short on time. This is one of my go-to recipes. We start with an onion. So to cut an onion, we're going to slice off the stem end here. And as a reminder, I'm holding my knife between my thumb, my first finger, wrapping my three fingers around the blade, holding the onion with my left hand. I'm going to slice off the papery stem end, put that cut side down, slice through the roots here. I'm going to peel off this papery outer layer. Both sides. We want to get rid of that because that's not a fun texture. It won't break down in the dish. A little bit difficulty peeling it here. All right, there we go. All right, and then we're going to dice this. So to dice it, you can see on here, there's some lines on the tops of our onions. I don't know if you're able to see that with the way the light is, but if you look at an onion, it's got little grooves. We're going to slice on those little grooves with the tip of our chef's knife, and we're going to leave a little bit of space between the end of our cut and the root end of the onion, so we're not cutting all the way through to the root end here. Okay, so we're going to slice down both sides all the way around both onions. Okay, and then I'm going to go the opposite direction. Evenly spaced cuts. And you'll see we've got a nice diced onion. So diced, if you see that in a recipe, it just means like evenly spaced, kind of square-like pieces. You don't have to worry about being perfect. If you can get them pretty close together to the same size, it's just going to help with more even cooking. So we're going to put these in a pot. I've got a pot over here, as you can see on, I think it's the right-hand side of your screen. I've got that on medium heat. I'm adding in a tablespoon of olive oil. If you need to be oil-free or you're choosing to be oil-free, you can do a water saute here. So you do a few tablespoons of water and then dump your onions in. So we're going to dump our onions in here. Okay. And you may notice I have got a towel, a wet towel underneath my cutting board. That keeps my cutting board from sliding around. Okay, so that's a really good thing to do in your kitchen from a safety perspective, so your cutting board stays in place. I'm going to turn up my heat a little bit. I'm going to give these onions a stir, and I'm just looking for these onions to become glassy and translucent, so we'll watch how they change over time. All right, the next thing that I want to do here, we're going to prepare our ginger. So we've got, we want about an inch long piece of ginger. This is some fresh ginger. I'm going to take my paring knife and peel off that papery edge by using my thumb to brace the ginger, stabilize it, and kind of push it into my blade as I pull that blade towards me. And any little like nubby bits, I'm just going to cut those right off. That'll make it easier for me to peel and easier for me to slice this up later. Okay. You could totally use dried ginger here if you didn't have fresh. The fresh ginger is just a lot sweeter and more pungent. So we're using that because I think it really levels up the dish. But if you don't have it, you could totally use dried ginger. So I just sliced it in half. I'm just trying to get it into thin little pieces because I'm going to mince this. And we're mincing, which means getting it into tiny little pieces, because ginger, if you've ever eaten a piece of raw ginger, it can be a little like spicy and it's really pungent, even though it is also really sweet. And we don't want giant chunks of that in our dish. We want to infuse that flavor evenly throughout our dish. So by cutting it into tiny little pieces, we can evenly infuse it throughout our dish. And you can see I'm mincing it by keeping the tip of my knife on the cutting board, and I'm just going up and down with a rocking motion over that ginger to get that nice mince. All right, that's looking pretty good. I am going to give our onions a stir here. And I want to show you, hopefully you can see how much that has changed. And the induction burner is mad at me for taking it off and sweeping at me. We'll get that going. All right, we're going to add our ginger into our pot here. And then I've got a 1/4 teaspoon of dried garlic. So you could use a clove of fresh garlic here, or a 1/4 teaspoon of dried. Okay, that's going to go in the pot. And I'm going to turn my heat down to medium. I've got some coriander that's going in here. I've got 1 teaspoon. And then I've got 2 tablespoons of curry powder. And curry, and we're going to give this a quick stir. Curry, for those of you who might be going, "Woo, curry, I don't like spicy things." Curry is not necessarily spicy. It's just a name for lots of different types of spices that are blended together. And there's all sorts of different variations on curry. Some are spicy, some are not. If you're shopping at like a Meijer or a Kroger, likely the ones that you're picking out of the spice section there are not going to be spicy. They're just going to have things like turmeric and cumin and coriander, some garlic and onion, maybe some fenugreek in there. And it's really the base of a lot of Indian dishes would be a blend in some form or another of those types of spices. All right, so we've got our spices in here. We're going to add in, we've got 2 containers of broth. I don't know where you're able to see me. This is low sodium vegetable broth, and we've got a total of 64 ounces of that, which is a 1/2 gallon or 8 cups. Get both of these in here. You might splash yourself a little bit. And we're going with low sodium so that we can control the amount of sodium that's in this dish. We can add a little bit more if we feel like it needs it or wants it, and then it's friendly for any of our friends who need to maintain a low sodium diet. And then I've got 2 cups of red lentils. We're using red lentils here as opposed to a brown lentil because the red lentils will cook down and mush together and create a more stew-like consistency for this dish. So we're adding those in there. I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit because I want this to bubble for about 5 minutes. And while that's going on, we're going to work on our cauliflower because this is one of the main ingredients in here. So I've got this head of cauliflower. It's got its beautiful green leaves. I want to get those green leaves off. So I'm just going to peel those off to the side here. My tray. And then I want to get this stem off and this core. So what I'm going to do that, I'm going to put the top of the cauliflower down on my cutting board, make my claw to keep my fingers out of the way of my knife, slice down the center, and then you can see this is the core of the cauliflower that I want to get out. So I'm going to take the tip of my knife, slice at an angle on either side, and then voila, the core comes right out. Okay, do that on both sides here. And one thing I should have here with my pot is a lid because that would help us bring this up to temperature a little bit faster. It's okay. We're going to pretend I have a lid and we're going to pretend that but when I'm done cutting this cauliflower that this is bubbling. But it'll be fine. It'll all work out. So with the cauliflower, you can do a couple things. You can break these with your hands into smaller pieces until you can't break it into small pieces anymore. You could cut this with your knife. I typically like to break them into these pieces until I can't cut because it just makes it a little bit less messy. And then I just use my knife to cut the bigger pieces. We're just going for bite-sized pieces here. All right, so I'm going to cut these. We're going to cut them into pieces like you would want to have on your spoon when you're eating this. Let's go through and do this real quick. And like I said, this recipe is really, really great to make for gifting to other people. It's also really great to make ahead to have throughout the whole week because it makes a good quantity. We're going to be putting a lot of veggies in here too, and you can really vary. Cauliflower is kind of the staple veggie in here, but you can pretty much throw whatever other veggies you've got in here. It's a good kind of kitchen sink recipe as well. Okay, so our cauliflower is cut. And we are going to put that into our pot. And actually, the pot is starting to bubble a little bit, so I'm feeling okay about this. I'm going to turn up the heat just a little bit because we don't have that lid on there. And then we're going to plop our cauliflower in here with the rest of our ingredients. Clear off some of my crumbs. All right, we've also got a couple large carrots that have been chopped. Again, you want to kind of get them into somewhat even pieces, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Miss Laura diced these beautiful sweet potatoes for this. Like they are so perfect in purity. You don't have to make them this perfect and pretty, but they look really nice going in here. So we've got 1 medium sweet potato. Okay, and then our last veggie, we're going to do a pepper. I don't remember if I've showed you this, so we're going to just quickly go through cutting a pepper. Long side down on the cutting board, and then take your knife. I'm going to get some of this cauliflower off of my knife. Slice the top off, turn around, slice the end off, set the end down on your cutting board, and then you can slice around that seedy core without getting seeds all over your cutting board. So it makes it a little bit cleaner. And then I want to get these into kind of large chopped pieces. So I'm just gonna stack a couple of those sides that I cut off, slice, and then go the opposite direction. Add those into my pot. And continue the process on these guys. So you may also notice that this recipe is really colorful. So we've got some reds and oranges and yellow from the turmeric that's in that curry powder. And then we're going to finish this off with some green. So we talked about eating the rainbow, and this is a really great recipe for helping you eat the rainbow. All right, we are going to just give this a quick stir. And we'll come back to this at the end of class and check for how soft the cauliflower is. So I'm going to set everything aside, change gears real quick for our next recipe. All right, the next thing that we're going to make is a black bean taco and a cabbage slaw. So like I said, this is a recipe that we make in our Nutrition Buddies cooking class, and it's something that kids love. So it's a great family recipe. And I'm going to change up our pots here. Bear with the beeping for 1 second. Okay. So we're going to start this recipe with half of an onion that has been diced just like we did a couple minutes ago. I've got my pan heating. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil here. And then I'm going to add in that onion. Get that going. And again, same kind of thing as before. What I'm looking for is for these onions to start to become translucent. Okay. Onions have really powerful sulfur compounds in them that are cardioprotective and help reduce some inflammation. They're full of quercetin, which is also one of those phytonutrient compounds that can help reduce inflammation in our body. So they're a really beneficial food. Anything in the onion allium family, super healthy to include in your diet. All right, so these are starting to change color a little bit. We're gonna let them go a little bit longer. And then the next thing that we're going to add, we've got some spices. So while these continue to cook, I'm going to add in some of our spices. We've got a half teaspoon of cumin. We've got a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. And we have a teaspoon of chili powder. That's going to go right in here into our onions, mix that around. And then we've got 2 pans of black beans that have been drained and rinsed. And those are going in there. We're going to give that a stir. And just for reference, if you wanted to use, if you wanted to cook your own beans from dry, 1 can of black beans is like 1 2/3 cup. Might be close to 2 cups depending on the brand. All right, so stir that to incorporate it. I'm going to start by adding about a 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of water. And then these beans are already cooked, and all we're doing is trying to get them to a consistency where we can mash them. So I'm gonna add a touch more water here. So we're basically making our own refried beans. Let's set that lid on there. All right, while those beans are cooking and getting soft so we can mash them, we are going to make a cabbage law. Got a lot of moving parts tonight. I'm appreciating having a team here helping out. All right, so to make our cabbage slaw, we're first going to start with, this is a really small cabbage, so I'm going to use the whole thing, but you would use half a medium or half a large cabbage, or in this case, small cabbage. The stem side is going down on the cutting board because it's a more stable surface. Slicing it in half, and then I'm going to core it just like what we did with the cauliflower. Those slices on either side, set that core aside, and then I want to slice this into, I don't think I'm going to cut it in half to get smaller strips. I'm going to cut it very thinly, paper thin, okay? Because this is a slaw that we're going to put on top of our tacos, and I don't want super thick pieces. Turn this on its side. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to show you this one half. We're going to stick this into our bowl here. And then we're going to massage this, which is helping us tenderize the cabbage and kind of break it down a little bit with that's about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And to massage it, just as it says, just crunching it up between your hands like so. Okay, until you start to see that cabbage decrease in volume and kind of look a little wilted. All right, we got that there. I'll wipe my hands off of cabbage, and then we're going to check our beans over here real quick because I see some steam rising out of them. Give them a stir, and I'm going to leave my lid off. Looks like I may have put a touch too much water in there. That's okay. Just leave the lid off, and that'll help evaporate some of that excess water. And I'm going to turn our temperature down just a touch. All right, so our cabbage slaw, we want to make a dressing for this. So to do that, we are going to start with a couple avocados. So we've got 2 ripe avocados. And to slice the avocados, I like to put them lengthwise down on the cutting board, take my knife through the top where there's the little stem end, and slice until I feel the pit. And then I will twist the avocado around the knife while still pressing it into that pit until I'm back to where I started. And then you can twist, and there you go. You've got your 2 halves of your avocado. We're going to do that to our other avocado real quick. So slice until I feel the pit, twist around the knife while pressing the knife into the avocado, twist the 2 halves apart, and then scoop the flesh of the avocado into your bowl here. Get that in. And avocados are a really great source of healthy fat. You're also getting a lot of magnesium, which is helpful for blood pressure regulation and for blood sugar regulation, muscle contractions, nerve function, all sorts of different things. To get the pit out of the avocado, I'm leaving it on the cutting board. I'm slicing down into the pit with my knife, and then I'm going to twist the knife and the half of the avocado in opposite directions, and then I've got my pit. Set that aside over here. I'm going to do that to the other one as well. Go. Okay, and now I'm going to scoop these guys out. And then we are going to mash this avocado. I'm going to mash this with a fork. If you have, you want to make a bigger batch of this, or you have a potato masher, or you want to use an immersion blender, you could totally use that here, but a fork is sufficient. And so I'm just going to mash this until most of the avocado, doesn't have to be totally smooth. I'm just trying to get rid of the biggest chunks here. Quick stir. And then I'm going to add in a 1/4 cup of olive oil, a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of cumin, and a pinch of salt. You can totally skip that if you would like to. And then I'm going to reserve our cilantro for dressing our cabbage. So I'm just mixing this all together to incorporate all of the ingredients until it's, and you can continue to mash the avocado while you're mixing too. That's looking pretty good to me. But again, if you wanted a smoother consistency for your dressing, use that immersion blender, stick it in your food processor, or continue mashing with your fork for as long as you would like. But I'm going to call it good here. Oh, except I forgot two very crucial ingredients are limes. So the acid in the limes is really going to make this dish. Oftentimes, if you have a dish that feels kind of flat or heavy, a little splash of acid from lime or vinegar can help address that and enhance the dish, take it up a notch. So we've got the juice of 2 limes going into here. And I'm going to check our beans are starting to stick a little bit. So most of that water is evaporated. I'm going to turn it down just another notch. So this tool that I'm using is a citrus juicer, and you may be noticing that I'm sticking the cut side down in here. So it's a little counterintuitive if you're used to the hand juicers. But this is a really handy tool for using fresh citrus, and you can get one on Amazon for, I think, $10. So they're not really expensive. I decided to stop at 1.5 limes because this is looking pretty juicy. My limes are really juicy. All right, just incorporating that in here. And then I'm going to mix, since we only did half of that small cabbage, I'm just going to take a portion of this. And I would recommend you do the same when you make this, because every cabbage size is a little bit different, and you can always add more dressing, but you can't take it off. So start slow. And I'm going to give our lentil dish a little stir here because it's bubbling up nicely. All right, so we're just trying to get the tacos coated, or the slaw coated. I'm going to sprinkle in, this is a 1/4 cup of cilantro. Mix that in here. And that is our cabbage slaw. So I'm going to set that aside for 1 second. I'm going to turn off our beans because they are done. And then we've got this handy dandy masher. And we are going to go over to our beans. This is the potato masher, and we are going to mash our beans and onions. You don't need to mash them all, just whatever consistency you would like your refried beans to be at. So whatever works for you. I usually like to go about 2/3. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Set my masher aside, and then we're going to assemble a taco. Right, so to assemble our taco, I've got some whole grain corn tortillas here. And typically when I'm at home, and what I would recommend you do as well, is pop these into the toaster oven for a couple seconds, put them in a skillet over some heat on the stove, just to warm them up so they're a little bit more pliable. It'll make them taste a little bit better too. But we're not going to do that tonight, so just pretend. We're going to take a portion of our black beans, put them in the center here. All right. And then we're going to take a portion of our cabbage slaw. And if you don't love really full tacos, you could totally have the slaw on the side. We've got some beautifully sliced red radishes. We're going to put those on here. Some sliced jalapeno for a little bit of heat. And then you squeeze a little bit of lemon juice, or lime juice on top. And voila, you have a beautiful, tasty, plant-based taco ready to go. And you can vary your toppings on these. Doesn't have to be shaved radishes or jalapenos. You can use shredded carrots, You could shred the radish instead if you want to. Some people really like spinach chopped up on their tacos. Whatever veggies you have around that you would want to cut up and add, they'll likely be good in this recipe. All right, set that off to the side. I got my skillet off here. We are going to check in on our lentils real quick because it's bubbling away. I'm going to turn that, I think, down on hair. Bubbling a lot. All right, and then while that continues to cook, well, actually, it's looking like, so I'm just going to show you guys real quick because I can't off screen. So you can see the lentils are starting to, you might notice that some of them have a dark orange center and a lighter orange edge. That means that they're cooking. You'll see some that still have that bright orange color to them. So we're cooking this until all of those are that kind of dull orange color. So it still needs a little bit more time. So back onto the induction burner it goes. And I'm going to add in to that. This is a bunch of kale that has been destemmed and chopped. You could use a bag of frozen kale, a bag of frozen spinach, and mix that in there if you want to. We just had fresh tonight, so that's what I'm using. But often when I'm making this at home, I'll use frozen. All right, so that is into our pot now. We're going to let that cook until the end of class here. All right. Our last recipe. So this is a really fast one. It's great for if you have, a busy week or you have some extra time on Sunday and you want to make a batch of something for the week ahead. This is a chickpea salad. So think like a tuna or a chicken salad, but instead of the chicken or the tuna, we're going to use chickpeas. So we start with a can of drained and rinsed chickpeas. And we're going to use that same potato masher. If you don't have one of these tools, a fork works perfectly fine. And you might find that sometimes some brands of chickpeas are a little bit firmer than others. So they might not mash as well. That's okay. The recipe is still going to work if you don't get to mash your chickpeas. They just might, if you choose to put this in a sandwich, they just might fall out a little bit more than if they were mashed together. So again, kind of using that 2/3 rule. I want some of the chickpeas to be mostly whole for a texture perspective, but I'm trying to mash about 2/3 of them. All right, so got that. That looks pretty good to me. I'm going to set my masher aside. And then I'm going to chop up some veggies that are going in here. So we've got a couple stalks of celery. They have been trimmed of their leaves already, so these are celery hearts. But we do want to do a little bit more trimming to get rid of some of the dried ends. So we're going to trim off either end here. And if you like to make stock at home or veggie broth, you can throw those scraps into a bag in your freezer. And then when you have a good enough volume, you could add those to a pot of water with maybe a little bit of salt and some savory herbs and make your own veggie broth. So I'm cutting the stalks of celery. I stack them on top of each other. I'm slicing them in half long ways. And then I am going to make thin slices in the opposite direction. Again, think of like tuna salad, egg salad. That's kind of what we're going for here. So I want these celery pieces to be small. So it's not overwhelming and evenly distributed throughout the dish. And I'm getting a little bit of crunch in every bite. All right, so we're going for about a 1/4 cup of celery, which is 1 to 2 celery hearts, depending on how big they are. Putting that in here. Right, and then we want 4 to 6 green onions in here as well. So for green onions, you've got some kind of dried papery bits on the outside edges. We're going to peel those off, or any slimy bits. I think that looked like the only one. And then we're going to trim off these root ends. Set those aside here. Stack them together, and then I'm going to make really thin slices. Again, trying to keep my knife tip on the cutting board as I make a rocking motion. These chef's knives are really well suited because they've got that curved tip to do this kind of slicing. And we're going to use the greens and the whites, and I'm just going to pull away any kind of wilted bits of the greens. And again, like with our bulb onions, these are adding some quercetin, so some great antioxidant power for us. All right, I'm going to call it there. We're going to add these into our bowl. I'm looking at the time, and we are going to go a few minutes over. So if you need to leave right at 7:30, no hard feelings. This is recorded, so you can catch the last few minutes then. We've got a 1/4 cup of diced pickles. We've got 3 tablespoons of tahini, which is sesame seed paste. So this is a good plant-based source of some calcium. Tahini is an awesome tool for making creamy plant-based dressings. We've got a couple tablespoons of lemon juice, a teaspoon of Dijon mustard, a teaspoon of capers. They add some salt and also more of that quercetin. A tablespoon of maple syrup for some sweetness. You could use honey here as well. And then a tablespoon of pumpkin seeds sunflower seeds for a little bit of crunch. We're also getting some zinc from those and some vitamin E. We're going to mix these all together. All right, and we're just looking to make sure that all of those dressing ingredients are evenly distributed throughout the entire dish here. And this is a recipe that's really easy to scale up. If you wanted to make a big batch, you've got people in your family that you think would enjoy this throughout the week. You can eat this with crackers. You can eat this on a sandwich. You can throw it on a grain bowl, put it on a salad. It's a really, really versatile dish, and it's super tasty. This is one of our favorites around here. I think everybody on our team makes this at least once a week. So highly recommend giving this one a try. And remember that all of the recipes for this class are on the class resource website, which I will resend in the email after class with the recording as well. So don't feel like if you missed writing down any ingredients, know that it's going to be on that website as well. All right, so that's our last recipe, but we do want to check in on our lentils because it is boiling away over here. We're gonna trade places here with our black beans. So you can see here that our lentils, all of them are that like duller color. They're not bright orange anymore. And the big thing we also want to check is the softness of the cauliflower. So you just cook this until the cauliflower, the sweet potatoes, the other vegetables are soft enough to your liking, and then it's good to go. So this is ready to go. It freezes well. I would let it cool down before you chose to put it in the fridge or the freezer so that it doesn't change the temperature in your fridge and freezer and maybe defrost some of the other stuff around. So this is all set. It's good to go. Looks like everything is soft, so we're going to call that good. And I'm going to pull up. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Can you guys see it now? There we go. Okay, that's better. There you go. So hopefully you can see the difference between what those lentils look like when we first put them in there and what they look like now. And I'll show you this cauliflower is really easily pierced with the knife, and so are the sweet potatoes. So I know that that's soft enough and we've cooked it long enough. Typically it's gonna be about 20 minutes of cooking time. Okay, that's usually what you're going for. I did want to let everybody know that we do offer a Foundations of Lifestyle Medicine class. So if this class kind of piqued your interest, or when I was talking about lifestyle medicine earlier, you're like, ooh, that sounds interesting, I would love to learn more. This class series really goes in depth into each of the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. We do some cooking, but it really focuses on the whole lifestyle medicine package. We have afternoon and evening options available. They're virtual. We do bill for these classes. So if you are interested in signing up, you definitely want to check with your insurance. And the code on the screen here is the one that you would want to ask your insurance providers if they cover. If you have questions about the class or you're interested in learning more, please email us at the email that's on the screen, and we'd be happy to get you some more information. And then if you are a Trinity Health colleague who is watching this recording or you're here tonight live, you can get 250 Live Your Whole Life points for watching this class either live or virtual, which is really exciting. So if you want to take advantage of those points, please, again, email us at lifestylemedicine@trinityhealth.org. Include the class name and then one thing that you learned from the class, and I'll make sure you get those points so you can upload them into the Live Your Whole Life portal. And then I will be sending a follow-up email with the recording from tonight's class, as well as the link to the recipes in the next week or so. So you can always expect to get a email from me within a week of class. I'm going to stop there and see if there were any questions that came through the chat.
There's a question that says, with plant-based diet, how can we add protein without a lot of carbs? A higher percentage of protein will help build and keep muscle, which is why I'm asking.
How can you add protein without adding a lot of carbs? So in a plant-based diet, a lot of those foods are carbohydrate based, but you can still build muscle and maintain muscle with a plant-based diet. Again, you're getting all of those amino acids that are important for muscle building in those plant-based foods. Carbs aren't the enemy. It's the processed carbohydrates that really we need to watch and pay attention to if we're trying to build lean muscle mass or lose weight or fat mass. Those processed carbohydrates, like our refined flours and lots of added sugars, are really what we need to focus on limiting. But you can still fill your plate with these healthy, whole, high carbohydrate, high nutrient dense foods like our whole grains and our beans and lentils. If you're still kind of concerned about that, focusing on things like tofu, the edamame or the tempeh are going to be even higher protein, slightly lower carbohydrate content than, say, your beans or your lentils. And then it looks like there's a question about swapping in vegetable stock for improving the flavor in the soup. So we did use veggie stock in this recipe. It's broth or stock you can use interchangeably. Either would be great in this recipe. Any other questions, Laura? Came through? I don't see any other more. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any other questions in the chat, but if you do think of something, please feel welcome to email us, lifestylemedicine@trinityhealth.org, and we're happy to respond to you. Thanks so much for spending some time of your Wednesday evening with us. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night, and looking forward to seeing you all next month when we talk about tempeh and tofu. Take good care.